The snow didn't fall like it did in movies. It didn't drift softly under streetlights or settle neatly on rooftops like silence made visible. Out here it came sideways, needle-hard, relentless, driven by wind that stole heat through fabric and armor and pride. It filled seams. It froze eyelashes. It turned breath into a liability. The platoon moved anyway. They pushed forward along the broken service road that cut through the White Valley, shoulders hunched, rifles angled down and down again as they scanned for shapes in the storm. The mountains on both sides rose like walls, dark rock bleeding through snow in jagged streaks. The air tasted of metal and old smoke. Lieutenant Bram Vance walked near the center, close enough to the radio operator to hear the static without needing to ask. He'd been told the route was clear. He'd been told the ridge was quiet. He'd been told the enemy had pulled back. He'd learned, quickly, that the people who told you things were rarely the ones who paid for them. "Keep spacing," he said, voice low but sharp. "Eyes up. Don't bunch." The men did what they were trained to do. Boots crunched. Packs shifted. The line stretched and tightened and stretched again as the road narrowed between rock and snowdrift. And somewhere far ahead, hidden in the storm, something waited. Not a monster, not a myth, a person. She lay in a shallow scrape in the snow, half buried beneath a camouflage sheet that matched the frost and wind-blown powder. The sheet wasn't perfect. Nothing was in this weather. But perfect wasn't necessary. What mattered was breaking the human pattern. No clean outline, no recognizable silhouette. Her name, at least the one they used, was Kessler. Most people didn't call her anything at all. They said Overwatch, or Eyes, or the Shooter, like giving her a name would make her more real and therefore more vulnerable. It had never bothered her. Names were noise. Results weren't. Kessler watched through an optic rimmed with ice. The world beyond the glass looked drained of color, a landscape drawn in bruised grays and whites. The storm hid distance, blurred angles, made every shape uncertain. But the bodies moving through it, those were clear. Humans moved like humans, even when they tried not to. She followed the line with patience. She didn't count all of them. She counted the ones who mattered. The one that paused too often. The one who signaled with his hand. The one who kept glancing left, thinking the ridge was empty. The lieutenant, she guessed. Her gloved finger rested along the frame of her rifle, not on the trigger. She didn't shoot because she could. She shot because the moment demanded it. Below, the platoon advanced toward the bend where the road dipped and disappeared behind a slab of rock. The wind howled, covering their noise. They believed that helped them. Kessler knew it helped everyone. She glanced right, toward a set of barely visible positions carved into the ridge, shallow holes, dark against snow, where other shapes waited. Not her people, not her mission. She was alone out here. Officially, she wasn't even here at all. That was the point. She wasn't supposed to engage unless the line broke. Unless the patrol walked into something it couldn't survive. Unless she was the last hinge keeping the door from swinging shut. Kessler watched the lieutenant raise a fist. The platoon slowed, then resumed, flowing around a patch of exposed asphalt. Their discipline was solid. Their spacing was decent. They weren't careless. They were just wrong. The first explosion was small, more sound than fire, designed to stop movement, not to kill. It hit the road ahead, throwing up snow and rock and a dirty puff of smoke. The lead element stumbled back, instinct forcing them into each other. Then the second sound came. Gunfire, sharp and close, from the left ridge. The ambush unfolded like it had been rehearsed. Rounds snapped through snow. Chips of rock sprayed. Men dropped into the shallow ditch beside the road, returning fire toward shadows they couldn't see. Vance yelled commands, pulling his people into cover that wasn't cover, trying to create order out of a storm that didn't care. Kessler watched it all like she was watching it on a screen. The shapes, the movement, the pressure points. The enemy's pattern was clean. They weren't firing wildly. They were steering the platoon toward the bend where the rock wall would trap them. It was a classic funnel. and it would work, unless someone changed the math. Kessler adjusted the optic, slowed her breathing. Her world narrowed to a slice of the left ridge where flashes blinked through snow, brief orange winks. She didn't have a perfect target. The storm robbed precision, so she hunted certainty. She looked for leadership, the rhythm of shots, the discipline of pauses. The shooter who fired in controlled pairs. The one who didn't waste rounds. The one whose position others oriented around. There, a darker shape, slightly higher than the others. A muzzle flash that appeared, paused, then appeared again in the same spot, consistent. Kessler centered the crosshair where the flash came from, then just below it, guessing the shoulder line. She exhaled. The rifle cracked. In the storm, it sounded like a door slammed in a distant hallway. The enemy fire faltered, not stopped, but confused, the rhythm broken. Someone shouted, muffled, a burst of panicked movement on the ridge. Kessler slid left immediately, dragging the rifle along the snow. A moment later, return fire punched into the scrape she'd been in, shredding the camouflage sheet into strips of white fabric and frozen powder. They'd heard her. Good. Let them look up. Let them waste time. Below, Vance seized the second. He pushed his men out of the ditch, forcing them to leapfrog toward a broken culvert that offered real cover. Two soldiers dragged a wounded teammate by the straps of his vest, boots scraping on ice, breath ragged. Kessler saw the wounded man's head loll back and thought, briefly, of something warm. Coffee. A heater vent. A room with walls. Then she crushed the thought. Warmth was a dream that made you stupid. She fired again, this time at the rock just above a cluster of flashes. The round sparked, stone shards flying like angry insects. It wasn't lethal, but it was loud and it forced bodies to move. Every movement in a storm was a risk, moving meant revealing. That was the lesson. That was what she sold for a living. The enemy shifted positions, trying to triangulate her. More rounds snapped up the ridge line, chewing into rock, throwing snow dust into the air. Kessler felt one strike close enough that the shock vibrated through her rifle. Her cheek was numb. Her fingers were numb. Pain had a way of becoming background music. She checked her magazine without looking. 6 rounds left. Below, the platoon reached the culvert. Vance pressed his back to concrete, eyes wide with the realization that someone was helping them. Someone unseen was taking pressure off. He raised the radio, shouting over gunfire. Who the hell is on that ridge? Identify. No one answered. Of course no one answered. Kessler didn't have comms in her ear. She'd been inserted to be invisible, and comms were a tether. A tether could be traced. Instead, she gave him something else. A signal. She fired a round into the far ridge. High. Nowhere near the platoon. Just a sharp crack that made both sides pause. It was a message for anyone who understood. I'm here. Keep your heads down. Vance didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He only nodded once, as if accepting an uncomfortable truth. Then he moved his men. The ambush intensified. The enemy realized the funnel wasn't closing. They poured fire into the culvert and tried to push down the road, attempting to flank. The storm covered their movement, making them bold. Kessler tracked the flank by sound as much as sight. She listened for the crunch pattern of boots, the way wind shifted around bodies, the tiny changes that meant someone had stepped where no one had been a second ago. A shape emerged through snow haze, 2 figures, moving fast, low. Kessler waited until they reached the exposed stretch near the bend. Then she took the shot. One figure collapsed, not in theatrical slow motion, but in a sudden, ugly fold, knees buckling, rifle slipping. The other froze, dragged the body back, panic overriding training. Kessler didn't fire again immediately. She wanted them to feel watched, wanted them to hesitate. Hesitation was a weapon. Below, Vance took advantage. He ordered a smoke grenade thrown not to hide, but to confuse. White smoke and white snow created an illusion of emptiness, a blank canvas. The enemy fired into it anyway, wasting ammo. Kessler's lips tightened. Waste was one of the few things that could make her angry. The storm grew worse. Snow thickened, wind howled louder, and with it came the new danger, time. Time killed as efficiently as bullets. Her muscles cramped. Her injured knee, an old injury, began to pulse. Frost crept under her collar. She swallowed and tasted ice. She checked her ammo again. For rounds. She could delay. She could not win. And she didn't have to. Her job was to buy space. To shift momentum. To create an opening wide enough for Vance's people to slip through. If they made it past the bend and into the ravine beyond, the ridge would lose its advantage. The enemy would have to chase in terrain that punished speed and numbers. Kessler watched Vance signal his men to move. Then everything changed. A new shape appeared on the ridge opposite. Higher, farther back, barely visible. Not a rifleman. A spotter. And behind him, something heavier. The shadow of a machine gun being set. Kessler's stomach tightened. If that gun opened up on the culvert, the platoon would be pinned. They'd bleed time. They'd freeze. They'd die where they were hiding. She had 4 rounds. For decisions. She locked the crosshair on the spotter's head. Wind pushed snow across her lens. She blinked. Cleared it with a gloved thumb, smearing ice. The spotter raised his hand. Kessler exhaled and fired. The spotter dropped out of sight. But the machine gun remained. A moment later, the weapon roared to life anyway, a long, angry stream that tore into the culvert, chewing concrete and snow into powder. Vance's men ducked, pressed flat, trapped. Kessler's pulse slammed against her ribs. The enemy didn't need a spotter if they were willing to spray. They were committing. That meant they believed they could finish this. Kessler's mind sharpened into something cold and precise. The machine gun had to be silenced, not because it was deadly, though it was, but because it changed the psychology. It made people feel helpless. Helplessness broke discipline. Kessler shifted her body, sliding along the ridge to gain a better angle. The move sent pain up her hip. She ignored it. The machine gun's position was partially masked by rock. She needed a shot that angled in. She found a gap, a fraction of black metal. A gloved hand adjusting feed. She didn't aim for a face. Faces were small. She aimed for the gun. She fired. The round struck metal with a bright spark. The gun stuttered, not stopped, but disrupted. The firing turned uneven, the rhythm broken. Kessler fired again immediately, exploiting the moment. Another spark. Another stutter. Then the gun went silent. Not forever, but long enough. Below, Vance shouted. His men surged forward, sprinting into the storm, using the moment of silence like a door swinging open. They moved fast, slipping past the bend, bodies disappearing into the ravine. Kessler watched the last of them vanish. And then she realized what she'd done. She'd shown her hand. The machine gun crew knew where the shots came from. The enemy on the left ridge had already been probing. Now they had a clear priority. Her. The storm didn't hide her anymore. It framed her like a target. Rounds snapped into her ridge line. Closer, more deliberate. Snow exploded around her. A chunk of rock shattered beside her optic. She felt a sting on her cheek and tasted blood. Kessler rolled away, heart pounding. Not fear, but the hard awareness that the situation had shifted from controlling the fight to surviving it. She checked her ammo. 1 round. 1. She lay in a scrape of snow with her chest heaving, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself a thought with edges sharp enough to hurt. If they climb the ridge, I'm done. She listened. Boots. Not below in the valley, above on the ridge line. The enemy was advancing uphill, using the machine gun's suppression to cover movement. They were coming to finish her at close range. Kessler's fingers trembled. Cold. Fatigue. Adrenaline fading. 1 round. A single decision left. She could take 1 more shot. Maybe kill one. Maybe not. Then they'd be on her. Or she could move. But moving in snow, injured, under fire. She glanced to her right, where the ridge fractured into a narrow cut, a steep descent into a darker, wind-carved channel. She'd seen it earlier and dismissed it as suicide. Now it was an option. Kessler did what she'd always done when the map ran out. She chose the least worst path. She slung the rifle, kept the last round chambered. She crawled, then slid, then found herself on the edge of the fracture, looking down into gray depth. The wind howled like an animal. Boots closed in behind her, crunching louder now. Kessler didn't pray. She dropped. The descent was violent. Rock tore at her gloves. Snow gave way under her boots. She slid more than she climbed, falling in controlled bursts, catching herself on jagged stone. Her injured knee screamed. Her ribs burned with every breath. A rock gave way. She slipped, slammed into the wall, and for a second the world went white with pain. She bit down hard enough to taste blood again. Above, shapes appeared at the fracture's lip, shouting, firing down blindly. Rounds pinged off rock, sparks flashing in the storm. Kessler kept moving. She reached the bottom of the cut and pressed into shadow. The wind was slightly calmer here, the snow packed harder. She pulled the rifle free, raised it, and saw a silhouette above, one enemy leaning over the edge, trying to spot her. Kessler's vision tunneled. One round. One decision. She settled the crosshair on the silhouette's chest and fired. The figure jerked back, vanished. A shout echoed. Then silence, brief, confused, hesitant. They didn't know if she was dead or if she'd moved again. The storm stole certainty. Uncertainty made people careful. Kessler used that. She ran. Not fast. Not heroic. Just forward. Away. Down the channel until the ridge line was behind her and the wind was the only thing she could hear. Eventually, her legs failed. She stumbled into a shallow depression and collapsed, breath ripping from her chest in ragged pulls. The rifle slid out of her hands and lay in snow like a fallen branch. She stared up at the storm and let her eyelids close. Not sleep, just one moment without looking. Morning was a rumor at first, a dim light leaking through cloud and snow. The storm eased enough that the world gained edges again. The wind calmed into something that felt almost gentle. Kessler woke face down, cheek pressed into crusted snow. Every movement hurt. She rolled onto her back slowly, gasping. Her radio, small, battered, was still clipped to her vest. She pressed the transmit button without hope. Static. Then a voice, faint, fractured. Kessler, if you're copy. Her heart jumped. She forced herself to sit up. This is Kessler, she said, voice raw. I'm alive. Silence. Then the voice came back stronger. Doyle here. We made the pass. Vance's platoon is with us. Air inbound. Give me your grid. Kessler closed her eyes. The relief wasn't warm. It was heavy. Stand by, she said. I'll move to a landmark. She pushed herself upright using the rifle like a cane. The channel she'd run down opened into a low clearing where a twisted antenna tower stood half buried in snow, an old communications mast, long dead. She walked toward it, each step a negotiation with pain. Minutes later, rotor blades thundered overhead. The helicopter's shape emerged through thinning snow like a dark promise. When it landed, men jumped out, faces hidden behind goggles, movements urgent. One medic reached her, grabbing her arm gently but firmly. Kessler didn't resist. As they guided her toward the aircraft, she saw Vance in the doorway, helmet dusted with snow, eyes fixed on her like he was trying to decide if she was real. He stepped down, boots crunching, and stopped in front of her. You, he said, voice hoarse. You were on the ridge. Kessler didn't answer. She didn't have energy for explanations. Vance swallowed, then nodded once, like someone acknowledging a debt. We thought the ridge was clear, he admitted. Kessler finally met his eyes. Hers were tired, flat, honest. It wasn't. The medic urged her forward. Kessler climbed into the helicopter, sat hard on the bench, and let her head rest against cold metal. The helicopter lifted, and the valley fell away beneath them. From above, the road looked small. The bend looked harmless. The ridge looked like nothing. Kessler stared down at it and thought, not proudly, not bitterly, just plainly. They advanced through the fire because they didn't know what they were walking into. Then she closed her eyes and let the mountain disappear behind cloud. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Epic Recon Stories. Here we tell the missions that never made the headlines, the decisions made in silence, and the people who carried them. More stories are coming soon.